Resolve, the U.S. federal government should adopt a policy to unilaterally move orbital debris. These points net benefits mutually the plan versus option cost plan through the lens of policymaker. This plan, the U.S. federal government will implement NASA's 12 proposed electromagnetic debris eliminators. U.S. federal government will eliminate NASA's 12, or will implement NASA's 12 proposed electromagnetic debris eliminators. Solvency. The first argument is what it does. The proposal came from a DARPA study which has said that we needed advanced ways of going about this and better grappling techniques. The next argument is going to be also that it would create electromagnetic fields that would be able to grapple in the smallest rocks that are less than 1 centimeter, which according to the Federation of American Science is currently causing 99.9% of the problem, and is the largest risk in the status quo to not only to the spacecraft, but also to satellites and to our national security. But also we would be able to impart force on these to be able to relocate them, or to be able to grab them up and drag them out of space travel lanes, or to be able to capture them and harvest them for the resources. Second argument is NASA's long-term orbital project model shows that the program would be able to stabilize the LEO or low Earth orbital environment of current debris, and also mandates no further explosions or debris will be released, i.e. we don't explode things in space. Third argument is the funds exist according to NASA's 2014 budget. This would be the cheapest way to be able to go about this, because we would only require 12 vessels to be able to saw back within 7 years, which means it's also the quickest way to be able to do so, which means that long-term solvency is best, means the Republicans will be the most happy about this. Also means that less money has to be spent over the long term on national security to be able to increase U.S. hegemony in space, which indication that they're going to like this. And also, your question.
At what level of the atmosphere are these placed?
Stratosphere. Low Earth orbital is stratosphere. Advantage 1 hegemony. The exit point of unity's first argument is according to the Federation of American Science. It says that a massive main debris in low Earth orbit has reached a critical devastating level that will show will lead to an unstoppable growth of space debris, which will soon lead to a situation in which we can't reverse it. But second argument is however they say that we would be able to solve this back with the electromagnetic program and be able to solve back. Now, second argument is the U.S. Department of Secretary of Defense says that space systems enable our modern way of war, and without these, most of our important advantages would evaporate, and the basic point is that the plan will be able to solve. First argument is we will be able to eliminate all low Earth orbital debris in 7 years, according to the British Interplanetary Society study. But also they said that a dozen 100-kilogram EDDE vehicles would be able to eliminate all 2,166 tons of low Earth orbital in the status quo, which is the total of the small debris which are currently less than 1 centimeter. Second argument is the EDDE vehicles also have the lowest cost because they're solar powered, and this is according to the Langley engineer at the head engineer NASA. But also the latest point of this is that they would be able to drag them into lanes which are out of the space lanes. They'd be able to screw up the junk and send them into a place in the atmosphere where they would be able to burn up, or we would be able to collect these things and reuse them. See, the point is scenario 1. The first argument is that he says that we will reach this critical threshold in the next 5 years, which indication that this is because of things happening like China hitting one of their own satellites a couple of years ago, and also Russian-China satellites crashing into each other, which has caused over a total of 1/3 of space debris which exist in low Earth orbital status quo. He says that if we're not able to do this, now that it will lead to a situation in which we can't be able to solve back for this. This independently means that our satellites won't be able to function, but also that we won't be able to send spacecraft into space to be able to compete militarily, and to be able to operate things like our electromagnetic sensor weapons, which is our current way of being able to check back China from launching their ASBMs. The latest point into this, according to U.S. Naval Head Admiral Head of Office of Naval Intelligence, Admiral Jonathan Greenhurst, he says that this new technology allows us to be able to take out the sensors of all of China's main ASBMs like the DF-J-21D that can hit our aircraft carriers, and also the new weapon that travels on the cone of a rocket at 10,000 miles an hour and can be able to take out any of our missile defense systems or literally anything disappoint us in back without this China will necessarily either will lash out in Chicago because they will view it as the U.S. won't be able to check them back because we won't be able to operate our EM sensor weapons which depend on satellites. Also, they said it leads to nuclear war because of miscalculation. We would both be dark, and China would, and either side would assume that the other side would strike, which is an indication that we wouldn't be able to assault back, and also we would perceive things which aren't missiles as missiles, leads to a higher risk of miscalculation. Advantage 2 is cascading effects. Thanks to Toney's genius, first argument is cascading effect is coming according to Vanderbilt University. They say that we want to. That this will lead to an imminent cloud that will be impenetrable, which is an indication that we won't be able to colonize space or be able to literally do anything or operate satellites. There's that second argument is without the plan. This means that space development further will be impossible for 100,000 years, according to the U.S. Air Force Academy. The be soon as the plan solved. The first argument is that the George Washington University found the plan will be able to stabilize and reverse the trend in literally 7 years, which is the fastest way to possibly be able to do this. It also means that inevitably our satellites won't work, which is the key to cornerstone to our economy. Without the plan, C's point is this scenario one is the economy. The first argument is systems are key to the economy because our not only our social but also political institutions, also the banking infrastructure, roads, and things like the smart grid, but also things like being able to stop back global warming. All this technology depends on the economy, but economic collapse next leads to war because of miscalculation and collapse of multiple polarity.
Two off. And then case in order.
Are either of them low?
No.
We're going to talk about stopping.
It could have been more exciting.
Case 2 off.
Yeah.
There's a little light turn over there.
Yeah, it doesn't have a bottom, so I can't set it on anything. So, I still need the impact picture for this. I'll make it up. Okay, cool. Everyone ready?
Yep.
Let's go.
The first off-case position is the China backlash disadvantage. They one is the negatives. The first argument is that U.S.-China relations are high right now. The other is the cooperation on Syria peace talks. The U.S. and China have worked together to broker the current peace agreement that's going on right now. The little B is that you can look to trade. This is the week of this week. The Secretary of State John Kerry and President Xi Jinping are engaging in bilateral trade negotiations. Kerry called the talks constructive and positive right now. The second argument is that
Relations fragile.
relations are still fragile. The little A argument is you can look at the Senkaku Islands. China is angry that the United States is backing up Japan. The little B is that you can look at the Dalai Lama. China is angry over this week's visit by the Dalai Lama coming to the United States. The second, the B supported the links. The first argument here is that the plan passes. The second argument here is that the plan angers China. China wants hedge into space. China is sensitive to. China sent a vehicle to space to remove defunct satellites recently. The third argument is that China is angry over the policy reversal that the United States has been decreasing
presence.
The United States has been decreasing presence since this end of the manned spaceflight program. The point is the internal links. The first argument is that the relations are going to collapse. The point is that incidents are going to expand. Problems in the relations tend to build off of each other. This offense to China your handwriting has gone downhill, bro. We'll build off of the Dalai Lama's visit. The little B is that space is huge to China. China in the past has used intercontinental ballistic missiles to destroy offensive satellites. The second argument is that the relations are going to collapse. You can look at the Senkaku conflict. The little A is that the U.S.-China is going to U.S.-China relate to stopping escalation.
Relations stop escalation.
Relations are going to are stopping escalation right now, but that is going to change the result of the plan. The disappointed the impacts. The first argument here is that this is going to lead to a regional war, that at the point at which China has the ability to, or decides to insert into the Senkaku Islands as a result of this change, then we are going to see a war spark as a result, because the United States has a security guarantee that it has with Japan, means that we are going to have to fight back. That you can look specifically to the rhetoric of the Chinese saying that they feel that the Senkaku Island war is going to be a short one, means that this was their defense minister, means that they are showing the arrogance that is needed in order for them to be able to actually do this, means that we are going to see a war and that the United States and China are going to have to go head-to-head with each other. Thus, the counterplan. The United States federal government will engage in prior, genuine, and binding consultation with the People's Republic of China over the implementation of NASA's 12 proposed electromagnetic debris eliminators. The USFG will engage in prior, genuine, and binding consultation with the People's Republic of China over the implementation of NASA's 12 proposed electromagnetic debris eliminators. The first argument here under the competition is that this is mutually exclusive. You can't consult and do the plan at the same time. The second argument, this is going to compete through the net benefit. The third argument here is that any firm is going to be severed. The little a is that this severs out of the immediate nature of the plan. The little b is that severance is going to be a moving target, because that just creates LOC strategy at the point at which they come up here and have a different plan. By the time we get to the MO, the little c is that this is going to kill competitive equity, because this is an independent voter and a reason to reject the team if they go for the permutation. Next argument is counterplan solves. The first argument here is that China is going to say yes. The little a is that they're already working on debris right now, means they have their own programs. They can be combined with this program. Little b is that satellites are going to be key to developing their economy and their information infrastructure, means that satellites are going to be key to China at the point at which they're massively developing their information infrastructure for more rural parts of China right now. The little c is that they know the risk to relations after the 2007 satellite that they blew up, because it led to twice the amount of space junk that existed before, means that China is going to see this as an opportunity to reverse that mistake. The last argument under this is the net benefit. The first argument here is that it avoids the disadvantage, obviously, and the second argument here is that it allows both the China and the United States to work together, means that we're going to be getting access to better solvency because we can represent the needs of both countries. Happy there, Corey?
Yes.
On to the solvency. The first argument here is going to be status quo solves. You can look at China in October of 2013 sent a vehicle into space to remove defunct satellite, means that they are already making steps to be able to check back against the space junk that exists right now. The second argument is status quo solves, that the United States is developing removal strategies. The little a is you can look at the water cannons that are being developed to be able to blast the debris out of the way of satellites. The little b is they can look at Project Ortiz that says that removal via remote controlled vehicles or lasers is the only reasonable way that we are ever going to be able to actually accomplish this, because it's the only way that we don't pose a risk to the satellites. The third argument is that the status quo solves. You can look at private actors such as SpaceX and other private companies that are taking an interest in this as a result of their vested interest in space, means that they are going to be able to solve back for this by themselves. The fourth argument is termed that this actually poses a risk to satellites, because massive electromagnetic fields that are generated by electromagnetic eliminators are going to cause interference with the way that satellites operate. Satellites have electronics which can be directly affected by these electromagnetic waves. It's the same thing as when you're using cheap computer speakers and they start beeping when you get a cell phone call. It's because of the electromagnetic waves. The only difference is that when this happens to a GPS geosynchronous satellite, it sends a ship into the wrong waters and it crashes off the coast because it ran into a barrier reef because it didn't know where it was, means that this is actually going to exacerbate all of the problems that they isolate in the PMC, at the point in which they're only making it worse by destroying the functionality of these satellites. Yes, Corey?
Satellites aren't shielded. This is why EMPs are so dangerous.
Right. Moreover, satellites aren't shielded, which is why EMPs are so dangerous and a real threat to the satellite infrastructure of the world, means that we're never going to be able to effectively use these in the vicinity of satellites, means that these satellites are always going to be at risk as a result of the space debris, but also going to be at risk as a result of these electromagnetic eliminators.
This is also more dangerous because they appear to be working, but they won't actually be.
Moreover, the fifth argument here is going to be turned that this creates masking, because at the point at which we look like we have begun to solve the space junk program, and we are actually only making it worse and putting our satellites at risk, means that we are never going to be getting anyone involved in actually solving this problem, because we have created the public perception that we have already solved this problem through this alternative means.
That's not the argument. The argument is that satellites look like they're working to the administration.
Oh, yes. So the next argument here is that satellites are going to look like they're actually functioning because they're still sending and transmitting data. The only problem is that this data is distorted as a result of the electromagnetic fields, means that it's difficult to identify when these satellites are being impacted, means that people are still going to be using this information. So people are going to be looking to these geosynchronous satellites that don't actually know where they are because they're transmitting the false data as a result of these electromagnetic field disturbances. Happy there, Corey?
Yeah.
On advantage one. What do you want here? What's their internal link scenario? That this one particular satellite can take out the sensors on a specific ballistic
What's the
missile?
status of your account now?
This up.
What's
If
your
you straight
interpretation of
tournament, we can't kick it.
Sorry, so that was their internal link stored here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want from?
Okay, other countries are still going to be creating more debris, which means that their 7-year argument doesn't work.
Right, the next argument here is that, the first argument here is that they're never going to get access to solvency because of the way in which other countries are still creating more space debris is the reason why we're never going to be able to solve back for this.
Where are you?
I'm on advantage 1.
We're at top of the flow. Okay.
Wherever you want.
Alright. What was I saying? Other countries make the debris.
Other countries are going to be making debris is the reason why we're never going to be able to solve back for this. You can look at the 2007 example of China blowing up its satellite as a reason why space junk is always going to continue to be a problem. It means you're never going to get terminal access to solvency. It means that this could always happen. Moreover, at the point at which we don't have the ability to track any of the debris that is less than 5 centimeters in size, which is equal to 600,000 different pieces of debris, is the reason why you're never going to be able to check back against these satellites potentially going down. It means that you were never going to get access to this. The only pieces of debris that you are going to be getting are the pieces that are larger than 5 centimeters is a reason why it doesn't actually matter because we're already tracking those pieces and we maneuver our satellites around them right now because the United States Air Force does that as its job.
Alright. Order is going to be the counterplan on top, then the case in order, then the disset. No, counterplan on top, case in order, disset. First argument is going to be currently the United States federal government will engage in consultation with the People's Republic of China over the implementation of NASA's proposal for the electromagnetic debris elimination program. And here's the shield links to the disadvantage because they just have minus is a genuine binding part, which means that we do plan anyway, which means that this is an evidence to show that we are extending an olive branch to the Chinese individuals in order to solve that for relation. Next part is going to be do the counterplan. The little item here is that this is a normal means of console, even though there is a text that says it's going to be unilateral action. Unilateral action assumes a world in which we consult China because of the U.S. Space Treaty, which means that you can act unilaterally. This is just not why in the real world text. There per equals severance arguments. This is not a severance argument because it's normal means, and the LOC is not going to be key to a unique ground loss. The MG is the most important speech because the MG is the only chance to be affirmative big offense, which means that we control the internal link and fairness initiation of the ground. Also, on this obviously you say China is going to say yes. This means that certainly supercharges the perm debate because it says that there's not going to be risk of the disset, which means that there's not going to be risk of any type of backlash happening right now. Also, the disadvantages to the counterplan are going to be both of the advantages because they can't 100% say that they're going to be able to solve back because China could just go back on the word right now, which means that it's highly suspect for the solvency overall of the counterplan itself. Top case. You can group up the arguments about how the squirrel solves, but the squirrel can't solve for the pieces littler than 1 centimeter. We say that we can solve for them with a little piece, which means the size was not going to be able to solve for this. You don't have any unique arguments that say they can solve for the little piece and maybe they can solve for the big piece. But in congruence with the plan, we can solve out for all the pieces. Also on your journey, you say risk. It risks satellites because you don't understand the technology. Technology is literally a big net. Electromagneticism is not like literally we're sitting at a pole. So all of these satellites, we're just dragging a net across and dragging all these pieces together and sending them off the orbital or the regular orbit of these low orbital types of satellites, which means that we are taking them out of the path, which means they will not interact with the other satellites in the atmosphere, which means that we're not going to trigger any type of impact to this turn.
Also, we would do this in mapped areas, and also, if they're going to be doing it in the travel lanes, they're not going to be...
We do this in mapped areas, which indicates that we can avoid the satellites 1 and 2. We are redirected them to other lanes. The next if you use a turn, it's going to make these satellites more rich because it's sending more distortion to more disordered data, but this is the same argument that I just made caused by the same analysis about this is not going to actually happen. Also, you will across the entirety of the solvency boards that say NASA they can do this now. They can eliminate all of this, and this is literally the cheapest option to do this on the Advantage one. You literally don't read anything to advantage one hegemony, or you literally don't read anything. All you say is other countries should make a degree, but we are going to articulate that the only country that has the impetus to stop having degrees is for the United States, which indicates that's try for the plan, which means that you can go across the entire the United scenario that says for American scientists means that degree will be unstoppable and will be unstoppable in the future, which means that we have inevitability on our side, which means that we control the direction of the policy to the equal growth according to the British society said we can put these vehicles into space and it will eliminate all of the debris, even the 1 centimeter one. They just isolate 5 centimeters. We are saying that we have a net increase of obviously because we have the 1 centimeter type technologies you say, or yeah. And also, you can walk across the entire get back to the Earth, it's cold, see there's no articulation of why it would never happen on the advantage too. You say basically the same thing you just said on the other advantage, but you can walk across Mars, obviously more specific on this question that the cascading effect is going to be coming in right on the stats will be the imminent cloud of the actual encasing of the Earth is going to happen inevitably. You say that we're not going to be able to decrease 5 centimeters in size, but no, we decrease 1 centimeter. This is the same thing I've been saying all of the goddamn flow. We decrease space debris. It is inevitable, which means your impact to the distance are terminally not unique. Go there now. First argument is going to be not unique about relations about the status quo. First argument is that they are attacking our side. They are attacking through cyber warfare our critical types of patent technologies or corporations with the indication that the relations are terminally not unique right now because they're infinitely low. Second argument is that relations are going to be superficial because it is just purely posturing for the international community. Look at their second war to this. They say they're going into trade negotiation with Kerry and Xi Jinping, but they do say that the relations are bad also because the Dalai Lama says this proves that it is just freaking posturing. It is just rhetoric by international community or international actors that have to keep their hegemonic positions in the world, which means that none of their arguments are going to be intuitive to a war happening in the internal link. They have no unique internal link on this instance, which means you're not going to propose. Also, the next one is going to be that the United. Oh, there's also going to be WTO disputes between the two over solar power. Also, that proves that there's going to be still animosity toward them, which means that they are not controlling the Union. So on this question, on the link specifically, they say that they have the first is plan paths to anger China and basically they say one link: plan angers China. First is that plan doesn't anger China. Plan actually is going to make China happy because China wants to see an increased coalition within the international community to build and to decrease the amount of space right now. The link on this question would have been tested if China independently felt threatened in space because India sent up a manned mission to the moon when they have never had a space mission ever in the history of ever, which means that the link has been tested in the space and the United States is not unique. The first argument, also the next argument is going to be term plan enables China to access new technology that the United States is going to be putting into the forefront, which means that they're going to be happy to see that the United States is using different technology that can help them in their process of decreasing space debris and also getting a new access and a new foot in what the United States is doing to revolutionizing and innovating their technology. Next argument is going to be turned the plan shows the United States cards in space, which means that we are saying we're not militarizing space, we're just helping you decrease space debris, which is an indication that it is going to decrease the animosity of the nationalists within China themselves because they're getting angry because they don't know the posture of the United States in space because we haven't militarized it yet, neither have they, but they are suspicious of us militarizing because the realism theory indicates that you never know what the other individual offensive capabilities are. That's why these instances are like stay in check, but we're articulating that the plan resolves this question, which means it resolves 100% of angering China, which is the only link, which means that we saw after this next argument is going to be turned that plan is 100% transparent, which means that the international community will have access to these type of mapping technologies. The EU is already doing this now, which means that the link is already being counterbalanced in the sensual, which means that you're going to be able to solve after this specifically with the United States technology. Also, the next is going to be turned on China. It's going to be knowing what's going on specifically, which means that there's no animosity towards this and no types of presence. What's up?
Also, relations are terminally low because of Senkaku, like the words.
Oh, it's a break. Yeah, on the Unionists again. They said that the relations are fragile, but no, their arguments on the fragility of the relations prove it's terminally low. Like, the relations are just bad in the status quo because of the Senkaku Islands, which means that we are controlling the internal link into any type of impact happening through the space debris. Space debris is inevitable, which means none of their impacts matter on this question. And relations is not going to lead to a war. The first argument is going to be mad checks back in the world. In the time of relations collapse, there's been plenty of instances where international actors have had a collapse of relations with the other individual. Look at India and Pakistan empirically prove how mad will always check back because the Indian Congressional Party specifically was the same party that was in the leadership during the 70s, but during the war between Pakistan and India, and they did not launch a noose when the international, or their entire country was mobilized to nationalizing against Pakistan, and they never did this, which is an indication that even the most LOC record language will never act in the face of this, which proves that always checks back. Also, academic interdependence checks back because Xi Jinping and John Kerry are engaging in economic talks right now, which indication there's never going to be an impact of this happening because they're talking right now. Also, all their arguments about the relations are superficial, which proves there's never going to be an impact to a China war to happen. There's a few arguments in this verse that Xi Jinping would never actually test or corrupt his entire leadership of China for attacking the United States. He would go down in history as the one who fucked up all of China's hegemony. The second argument is that the Nationalist Party would never do this. They know that the United States would decimate them in this capacity, and the international community would get involved, which means that they would never go to war. Unless in the world of play.
The order is going to be counterplan, disadd, case. I'm going to start the timer and we're going to talk for a second.
You said what again?
Counterplan, disadd, case.
Oh.
And case is just straight. I'm going to start the timer, we're going to talk for a second, and then I'm going to start.
Okay.
Starting on the counterplan debate, the first argument is the perm did plan and engage in consultation. Our first argument is intrinsic perm there. Just adding aspects to a non-lateral engagement, which is neither in either the plan text or the counterplan text. The second argument here is that intrinsicness leads to a moving target. Our argument here is that this creates it so that they can just add inevitable different parts to the plan and both the counterplan in order to resolve the offense. Our argument here is that this eliminates our ability to create offense in the debate. This additionally, second to say this destroys our ability to access the LLC offense. Our argument here is when they can add whatever they want necessarily means we'd never be able to get access to the debate. Additionally, third, we can extend our arguments about why moving targets kill competitive equity. Our argument here is that the LLC is the most important speech for the negative because it's our only ability to generate offense. Their arguments about the MG being key don't matter in a world in which if we don't get access to offense in the LLC, then we have to make new arguments in the MO. We'd never be able to access the debate because the PMR gets no arguments. This necessarily means that it's an independent voting issue because the fact that we eliminate the competitive equity in the debate and only by rejecting the affirmative is going to resolve this internal warrants. Additionally, the second argument here is going to be disadd to the permutation because the fact that it's going to lead to the disadd to the permutations that this links worse into the counterplan into the disadd because the fact that China is going to believe that the consultation was prior and was genuine and that the United States was going to listen, but if they just go ahead and do it anyways, necessarily means that China's going to be more angry as a result. I'll get to the bottom. Additionally, this necessarily means it's going to be worse linking to the disadd. Additionally, the third argument here is that they don't make any reasons to why the consultation is key. Our argument here is that China wants to have a key hegemony in space, and only by actual cooperation between the United States and China is going to allow for is going to prevent China backlash. Necessarily means the only the counterplan solves back to disadd, your permutation doesn't function. Additionally, the next argument you make in perm the counterplan, your argument is on normal means. However, first we say that you don't provide an example about why this is normal means. You just assert that it is necessary. It means that you don't get a warrant here. Additionally, second we say that the United States policy has always been unilateral. Necessarily means that the Soviet Union, our policy in front space has always been to act on our own as an extension of our hegemonic power. Necessarily means there's no reasons why it's normal means. Additionally, third we say this is severance from the original permutation from the original LLC, and you can extend all of our offense why severance is bad. Their only response here is that why the LLC is not key because the MG is key. However, they don't make arguments about why the MG has been eliminated from this round. They could have made arguments about why China would say no. They don't make those arguments. But just in a second, we say that this still is going to prevent our access. We say that the LLC is our most important speech. They still get new arguments in the PMR. We don't get a new shot in after the MO. Necessarily means this is going to be worse. They concede all of our arguments about why China would say yes to the plan. Necessarily means we solve that for 100% of the case. Means and they don't make any arguments about time frame differential. Means the counterplan solves 100% of the case, and they don't get access to any of their offense on either the disadd, on the disadd, or on the case debate.
Question?
Yeah, I'll take your question.
Okay, so your disadd to the first perm is that it'll link harder to the disadd, but in the world that they say yes, how would it link to the disadd?
Our argument is that China wants a real and genuine consultation.
What's your definition of real and genuine?
They want to.
What's your definition of real and genuine? Like, what's the difference?
That the United States will listen to what China says, and they will listen to either into input and the result of the conversation. I gotta move on, bro. Disadd. You can make those arguments if you want, or you could have made it in the MG.
Oh, we will.
Moving on to the disadd. The first set of arguments they're making are the non-uniques. Their first argument is on cyber warfare. However, first we said that this conflict has been resolved over the years. Not only has China denied the access to that, it's actually their government. We said it's also that it's mainly grassroots movements within China. That means the United States is backlashing the status quo. Additionally, second, we say that there was a cooperation last year between Xi Jinping and President Obama necessarily resolved this issue and said the United States and China are going to work together to resolve cyber warfare. Necessarily means it only feeds back into our remakes about why relations are high in status quo. Additionally, your next argument here is that it's just posturing in order to keep up hegemony. However, you can look at the fact that China sees space as an absolutely key ability to access for their hegemony. First, you can look at the nationalism arguments that China views the expansionism as part of their national strategy. You can look at this why they're doing things such as taking over the Scarborough Shoals and expanding in the Senkaku Islands. Necessarily means that the actual ability to access to space is not just posturing; it's actual part of their strategy. Additionally, second, we say that the empirics prove that China sees space as key. You can look at the fact that they shot an ASAT, one of their own satellites, necessarily means that they view space as one of the key aspects. Additionally, your next argument here about the WTO proves. Additionally, first we say that this is a long time frame out. We say that most of the WTO disputes are not happening for the first several years. Necessarily means that just because it's an ongoing dispute, as long as you're not ruling, your arguments don't function. Additionally, second, we say that these issues are always tend to be resolved within negotiations themselves. Necessarily means it only proves back into our arguments about how this actual cooperation between these two countries on these varying issues necessarily means that this resolves your internal link. Additionally, your next argument here is about the Senkaku Island leading to a worse impact. However, this is where they cross-apply back up. I'm just getting this argument here. Your argument about Senkaku Island, first we say that you are misarticulating this. We say that Senkaku Island is a flashpoint for conflict. We say that the conflict between the United States and China is not between the United States and China, it's between China and Japan. Rather necessarily means that the hard relations is not happening over the third level. Additionally, the next argument you look at the fact that this is a flashpoint that only the collapse of relations and stops this conflict necessarily means that if the United States is injecting against China through this cooperative relationship, China would necessarily have no reason not to attack the Senkaku.
Exactly. That's what I wanted. That's okay.
Next set of arguments you make is on the turns. The first argument you make here is that China is going to be happy because it decreases debris. First we said that no reasons why this is true. We said that China is taking unilateral approach to the status quo to resolve debris. Necessarily means they don't want the United States there. You can look for arguments on status quo assaults about why China just sent a vehicle into space in October of 2013 to remove space debris. Necessarily means means that there's an empirical warrant about why they don't care about the United States action. Additionally, the next argument you make here is that India would have pissed this off. Additionally, first we say that this does not matter to our flashpoint impact about Senkaku Islands. Necessarily means that India doesn't be part of that. And additionally, second, we say that China doesn't care about India because the fact look to not only did China doesn't see India as a threat. They want, India may be a rising power economically, but they don't have either the military strength in order to be able to check back against China. It means that their manned space mission doesn't matter to China's overall national strategy. Additionally, your next argument here is about how you're creating new tech in order to be able to solve our power. First, we say that if you're not giving out this tech to different countries, especially not giving this to China, necessarily means that still you don't get access to this link. Additionally, second, we say that you're only going to be making this worse by showing them off this technology and not giving it to China. It necessarily means it's going to make China more angry. Additionally, your next argument here's how you're going your turn because you're showing the cards in space and you're not showing you're not militarizing. First, we say that you're only making it worse by showing that you have new technology that you have not shown off. Necessarily means you're going to that China's going to see a chance of militarization. Necessarily means you're only internal linking yourself back worse. Additionally, we say that you're going to say it's better to show off no technology and to say that you don't have anything. Necessarily means the internal link to resolve this quickly.
This came from DARPA. It's the research arm of our military. That is space military.
Additionally, your own solvency says this comes from DARPA. Necessarily means that you are not solving that. Shows that this is a fact of militarization. Means that you are still trading the link. Additionally, your next argument here, we don't need that. You make all these arguments on the no internal link, no impact because there's no war. First, you say that MAD checks because of Indo-Pac. However, your Indo-Pac argument doesn't work because of the fact that great powers were checking that. You can look to the fact that countries like Russia and the United States were checking against the United States against India, Pakistan escalating. Necessarily means that a great power war between the United States and China is necessary. Doesn't mean that MAD doesn't check. Additionally, you look to our specific analysis on flashpoint impact. Necessarily is going to be the internal links and causes the most improbable impacts that lead to this impact. You say economic independence checks. However, you don't provide any warrants. Additionally, say that you can go to our analysis about why China views this as part of national strategy means that their economy doesn't matter. Your last arguments on its relations don't matter in a world where this is part of a national strategy.
I'm going to put this out on top, followed by the solvency. Just add solvency.
Case solvency?
Yes, sorry, case solvency.
Actually, no, let me change that. Disab, counter plan, and then case in order. Solvency of functional expenditure. We're not ready. The first and easiest ballot is going to be on the disadvantage for Nevada today because of the point at which we see that China is going to backlash because the uniqueness arguments that they read are actually the brink scenario that we need for this disadvantage. Is the reason why you're going to be evaluating the disadvantage in favor of Nevada means that we are going to spark a war between the United States and China. If we pass the plan today, is the reason why you're going to reject the affirmative plan. The first argument that you need to look to is on the uniqueness level. They're going to come here and try and say that all relations are terminally low, but that actually functions within the disadvantage of the point at which we tell you that there's a flashpoint at Senkaku, and that at the point at which our relations entirely collapse, then we are going to see that this is going to be the shift that is needed in order for China to be willing to attack Senkaku. Is the reason why this is going to happen. So none of their uniqueness arguments actually matter in the debate today. At the point at which we say there's still some shred of relations left, and that they are going to be slapping that shred of relations in the face. The next argument that you need to look to is on the turns. The most important argument here is the argument that Corey makes about how this is showing that the United States is militarizing space because it's an initiative that is launched by DARPA as a reason why this is like arm of the research branch of the...
The argument specifically on the turn that this shows and looks like the United States is militarizing space is completely new. It was never breathed in the MO or the LO.
I literally say those words.
This
is coming from the
which number?
Which
number? Which number?
I think I had it as number 3. I think I missed one in there. Where you're saying that it shows that the United States is not militarizing space. I stopped for it.
The 2 turn?
Sure.
I have it. I float it as perception leads to proliferation and discount. I paraphrased his terms, but he said it like 3 times. Areas. I don't specifically know what line by line you're referring to, because that was kind of weird to me when you were going down line by line, like you skipped the argument and then went back to it a couple times, so that could be why it's not showing up on your phone. But
I don't think there's one. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. I'll be right back where I was. This is the reason why this is going to be the cause for the U.S.-China relations to collapse entirely, because of the point at which this is an initiative that is launched by the United States military. There's a reason why China is going to take offense to this specifically because this is going to look like the United States is just prepping space to be militarized. Is the specific reasoning that Corey gives you is the reason why we are going to always be evaluating the link scenario here. At the point at which that stands, then we are never going to be evaluating any of their other arguments because the perception that is needed for China to be able to backlash against the United States exists right now. On the internal link level, you can cross-apply the fact that this is the flashpoint that is going to be needed. You can look specifically to the Senkaku becoming the flashpoint. They say that relations not existing doesn't lead to war, but at the point at which we isolate the flashpoint and we say that this is actually going to be the change that is needed, you're always going to be buying this evaluation better. Moreover, their examples are from like 20 years ago. We're probably going to be looking to today. Corey, are you happy there? Right. So you can drop down to the impact level at the point at which they never even talk about the impacts. You can extend these. This is going to cause war between the United States and China. At the point at which this is not going to stop at Senkaku because I isolate out of the LOC that this is going to be a war that develops out of there because this is going to spill over and going to lead to more death. So that not only is there death as a result of the war that happens over the Senkakus, but there's death elsewhere in the world as a result of the United States and China directly going to war with each other as a result of the Senkaku flashpoint that happens. Is a reason why you're never going to be evaluating in favor of the affirmative, because when the United States and China go to war, we're going to kill enough people to where we don't need to worry about the impacts that are isolated and the advantages. Is the reason why you're going to be evaluating the disadvantage over the advantages.
This happens now. Their analysis is 7 years in the future.
Right, moreover, this happens now, not 7 years in the future, and any risk of collapse of, so they're saying that these satellites are going to go down 7 years from now. I'm telling you, China's going to get pissed off and start fighting us tomorrow is the reason why we're probably going to evaluate the disad first, because it happens so immediately. Onto the counterplan. You can extend all of Core's argumentation about how any permutation is going to be either the first one's intrinsic or the second one is severance, and you're never going to be evaluating these. The point at which their only argument about this is that the MG is the most important speech in the debate. It's really ironic to hear that coming out of the MG, but you were never going to be evaluating this first. At the point at which this strat skews the negative massively, at the point at which they're able to just capture all of the ground that we read into the debate. Corey, what else do you want?
Independent voter.
Huh? Right, moreover, this is isolated as an independent voter coming out of the LOC is the reason why you're always going to be rejecting that if they go for the permutation. You want anything else here, Corey?
The dispatch of the perm, the China.
Right, or we can extend the dispatch of the perm. This is only going to make China more angry at the point at which we're like, hey, do you care about this? Just kidding, we're not actually concerned. We're going to do it anyway. We just wanted to let you know. There's probably a reason why we're still going to be pissing them off, and that's still going to be a flashpoint needed in order to be able to spark the disadvantage. There's a reason why you're never going to be evaluating the permutation is a good idea. Happy there?
Yeah.
On to the solvency arguments. You can extend all the solvency arguments about how this is going to be solved in the status quo as the reason why we don't need to do anything to be able to evaluate the advantages is the reason why you're going to be preferring the disadvantages first.
Alright, it will be an overview. Then it will be the case in order. Then it will be the counterplan. Then it will be the disadvantage.
So what was on the very top?
Overview,
Oh, okay.
case in order, counterplan, and disadvantage. Three reasons, Jeff. The first is that they can see that both advantages are disadvantages to the counterplan in a world in which China would be able to go back on their word or be able to say no. And the only way they would be competitive if China were to say no or to say yes, which puts them in a double bind, which means the counterplan is not competitive if they say yes anyway. But the second reason, they drop to way too much impact defense on that mitigates the war over perception, which is what the D is contingent on. Our argument is that war is all about miscalculation when things go dark, which is an independent reason why we're winning the probability. None of our impact D applies to us, but they literally dropped too many arguments. And now go on to solvency. They say
Squirrel can't solve for 1 centimeter. That's my argument.
they don't answer any of our arguments about how the plane would be able to solve for the small pieces, because we would be able to have an electromagnetic net for the mapped areas, but also how we would be able how we would be able to solve for those things that wouldn't actually affect with the electromagnetic pulse of the satellites. On the advantage one, they can see the entirety of the case. They don't answer these arguments about how it's going to be unsolvable in 5 years, and it's how it's completely inevitable now. But also they say that they can see that we'll be able to solve back for this for 1 centimeter in less than 5 years, which means that we're 100% outweighing them on the miscalculation scenario, which is going to be inevitable within which in 5 years, which necessarily leads to a large-scale world-wide war because of the propensity for miscalculation. Because one, we won't be able to know what they're doing, satellites or weapons or spacecraft, because none of our satellites will be able to work. But however, we won't be able to use any of our satellite weapons to be able to take out their missiles, which indication that will lead to large-scale nuclear war, which 100% outweighs their scenario. But also
time frame 5 years versus 0. Like, no bright line for relations.
Right.
How many years?
There's also absolutely no bright line for relations or what would cause it to collapse in status quo. We're just winning too much defense about how this hasn't happened in the past. But also we say that this is actually inevitable in 5 years. Worldwide war that would go nuclear and lead to most death of life on the planet, which indication that we're 100% cold winning on magnitude, but also on time frame as well, because we're just winning too much defense about why this would happen. Extend the entirety of the advantage too. They drop the entirety of it, which means economic collapse would come upon this, because none of our infrastructure would work, which means none of our banking systems or literally anything we do would reason why it also leads to war on the counterplan. We're not going for the permutations, just a test competition, but also it's not intrinsic, because the permutation was simply the counterplan less prior genuine binding, which means that it's all the plan, all part of the counterplan, which means that this is simply a times cube. But however, they drop that both advantages are disadvantages the counterplan because China will be able to go back on their word, which means that the plan wouldn't be able to solve, which indicates that the counterplan is terminally not competitive. Either they say yes, and we will be able to solve back for this, or they say no, or they say no, which means that the plan doesn't go through and be able to solve the status quo. We're winning too many arguments about how there's no bright line of relations, which means that in a world in which they don't get their dissent, the counterplan doesn't fucking matter. Now they say that U.S. didn't backlash because the China graduates will work on cyber warfare. However, our argument is that extended, according to the Federation of American Scientists, China has tried multiple great attacks on the main hardware in the United States in the last year, but also that they've been trying to steal IP from international companies that manufacture within China, but also here, which is an independent reason why our relations are terminally low in terms of cyber. Also, they say that Xi and Obama have, however, just cross-plot posturing with this argument. Also, they say China views the expansion as part of their national strategy, but our argument is that cross-plot reads posturing arguments to this, but also they say that simply that it's not posturing, it's part of their national strategy. However, they're just losing too much defense on this page as to why this is not true. But also, even if this is part of their national strategy, they're conceding arguments about how it would be transparent on the international stage because the U.S. They dropped this argument. We say that it would be 100% transparent. The U.S. would be able to save it and share it with the international community because they want to be able to help us all be able to solve this problem. But also, a world WTO dispute ongoing. They say, but however, this argument doesn't matter. On the impact, they're conceding defense arguments. The Indo-Pakistan analysis would be able to check back for this because the Congressional Party didn't launch nuclear weapons even when the entire country wanted them to be able to go to nuclear war. It wasn't the great powers that would be able to solve back for this, but also the internal relations within the country, and they're also conceding that Xi Jinping doesn't want to ruin his legacy, and also the international community knows if it's over, it's an interview. We don't say that would be able to check back, but rather these other arguments that go drop.
A compelling delineation between this mad checks back articulation versus the miscalc, I think needs to be handled a little better by the negation out the gate. Because it's interesting almost because I can totally see you guys not explaining it well enough, and it's because I know you guys don't know what arguments you're making, but I can totally see a judge in the back of the room if they were going to say nuke's not going to happen regardless. The only thing that's threatening is some other disadvantage that doesn't have that same impact. But since you guys are both going for nuclear war, then it kind of, guts that. But all of your guys' case turns, or throw case turns in there or something like that, they become problematic when their most shelled out disadvantage is the nuclear war scenario, and they're arguing how mad checks back. Now, I know the answers to that, but I think you guys could have done a better job of explaining why the case solves for nuclear war, but then why the disadvantage won't get to nuclear war. You know what I'm saying? Just make that a little bit more clear in the future. Resolving this debate. One is, first, Evan, you got to do a better job out the gate. You look like a noob, bro. You sound like a noob coming out the gate. You're stumbling over words. There's half of the stuff I just didn't get because I was listening to what you were saying, I was trying to get it, and then you would say it and then move on. And I was like, whoa, I couldn't piece it together out the gate. So you want to start off a little bit cleaner, so that way you have a better chance of piecing it together. So it's not like I have Dartmouth study, and then it was just like I couldn't get the gist of the study. Then I have electromagnetic debris. They'll bring back the smallest bits of pieces of metal, and then there was some stumbling in there. So you see, I was just getting stuff, and then there was stumbling, a lot of stumbling, one or two words, stumbling, one or two words, and then I didn't piece it together. So you want to work on that so you come out the gate a little bit stronger, hitting a little bit harder, and stuff like that. But that's all I got on the first initial case construction. So how many only got one off or two off? Counterplan and disadvantage.
So the double prep kind of messed with us.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay.
Because he was doing the PMC, I was doing the LLC stuff, which is also why he tripped over my really horrible handwriting.
Okay.
Okay. Because
that was the next thing I was going for. I was like, you only have one off, man. It should be legit. You should know at the back of your hand.
Yeah.
But I forgot we did double prep, so because I randomly got Subway and stuff like that. So that's kind of problematic because we don't get a definite look for strategy as far as for them to engage it a little bit better, because you took a lot of time so that you didn't get to case turns, and so you're gonna do a one-off counter plan with the console. And you definitely need some unique console benefit turns on case at least for me, like, I think the most clever thing is to like what you can use, I know your head now, for the console. One of the clever things that I also think that you might want to look at is is consulting, and then this is both sides of the table. I haven't told what specific is, but consulting, and then run your disadvantage or advantage off the consult process, not off the decision.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We did it a lot 2 years ago. We came up with an idea in policy, and I have in some of our teams last year against the LD case that I was running at Delta. That's what we were doing. Our case at Delta was off Consult Cuba for farming, whatever, agriculture, and then we were running our advantages off the consultation process, not off of whether they say yes or no. You know, okay. So like opening up relations is good because of X. So when people ran their generics, they say yes, they say no, they wouldn't link. It kind of became a little more nuanced than that. So that's one of the things to think about. So one of the key issues that I have with this disadvantage is I think after Reed's speech, Reed's flying in some B-12 bombers really sitting on the uniqueness. I think there's a big issue on the uniqueness argument. I think you're trying to pull out of it a lot with some very smart arguments and hopefully getting some target arguments, but I just think we're not doing enough to turn back some of his arguments about how, you know, this will make China happy. The double bind where he's making arguments about the Dalai Lama versus other issues that are going there and what is your uniqueness, I think that becomes ultimately problematic in this debate. Also the articulation, once you look at that versus what the plan is actually doing, there's arguments about how electromagnetics are going to cause miscalculations of malfunctioning satellites. All these kinds of stuff become problematic because I think that you're not necessarily understanding what they're doing. And that could be the case in hand. Also, I think it could have been also problematic, and I think you guys should have asked for a point of clarification a little bit more and peppered them in Evan's speech and said, well, okay, clearly, like, so what exactly are you doing? Yeah. I think because that would have given you guys a lot more traction, because I think Reed gets out of a lot of what you're doing when he's like, literally they're nets. Like, we can scoop up and move them to where we want to move them. Now, you guys keep on, and then on that note, Reed, you're sitting on this, you guys are talking about these space lanes forever, and that's not even where the debate goes.
We're out. Good to see y'all.
Live long and prosper, my friend.
Yep. Hit me up a little bit when you get a chance.
I will. Okay. And so, like, you're sitting on these, both of you are sitting on these arguments that are made. So, my question to you right now is, like, what was the strategic reason for spending so much time talking about how you're able to move, scuttle, or salvage these? I don't even know what they are. Are they drones, like little flying solar drones?
Well, the reason I did that is because they made the argument that the electromagnetic, like a pulse, like, you know, like an EMP, shut down all of the satellites.
Yes.
I was just trying to make the delineation that it's not like a pulse we're sending out, so all that satellites won't be affected at once. It's more like a concentrated net that goes around the lanes and pushes it out. Because there's a lane, like, they all go in the same direction, you know. Like, it's the normative lane in, like, the stratosphere, the low orbital stuff. We're saying we're taking it out of that lane.
Got it. So you're pushing it electromagnetically, though, right?
Yeah.
So you are sending off a pulse, kind of, but it pushes it somehow?
A concentrated pulse.
The argument is that it wouldn't interfere with working satellites because what's going through the lanes is the aircraft in the working satellites, but they would use it, they would target the stuff within the lanes that things travel in and pull it out. They wouldn't be targeting things.
It's like strategically
They wouldn't be targeting, you know,
That's like
if
you
a working
shut it
satellite.
off in a second.
Okay. I dig it. That wasn't clear for me either. Like,
Yeah.
Push
that wasn't clear for me. So again, Evan, that has to be clear coming out of your speech out the gate.
It was complicated, man. You know,
I still don't understand how that happened. So like they're like sending like special stuff, or are they pushing it out with a pulse?
The net.
It's a physical net.
No, it's an electromagnetic net.
Electromagnetic
It
net.
pulls on it.
So it pulls, but they can target it like beams, like tractor beams. Like,
Sure, man.
So again, like this stuff, like you guys got to make those questions, because I think that becomes ultimately problematic for me to have to not want to vote for you in a world where there's mischaracterizations of what they're. Because I knew enough that it wasn't an EMP style thing. I knew enough, and my thing I was like, how is this electric? From what I imagined, there's a giant magnet flying around. Stuff was sticking to it, and then somehow that thruster's on it, and it could pull it out of these lanes. You know, so that's how I envisioned it, but I'm not in the lit, so I mean that's kind of how I seen it.
So I think ultimately when you become problematic, I think the defense on this position is enough for me to start questioning like whether or not you're actually going to solve. I think the MAD starts to check back, especially in a world where you're not doing good enough work on why MAD doesn't check back. And I think that there's a greater propensity, even though I think this argument could have been better fleshed out, like sat on a little bit more in your speed reach, especially, or not really reach, but more like the rebuttal, is the idea that the only risk of China saying no and then us having to go forward with it anyways is with the counterplan, right? I think the bilateral or the lateral argument is a good argument. I think you need to sit on that argument because I think if you win that argument, that act functions as the internal link or the reason to why I always vote for your plan because that controls the risk in the debate. I think. I don't know. I could be completely wrong. Right?
No, that's smart.
So that's what I got. Unless you have something specific. Cool.
Okay, on the the last minute of my speech when I was talking about like the Indian Congressional Party in the 70s, like do you not really I mean that just came to me, like proving that like mutually assured destruction checks.
No, I thought that was
in a
interesting.
relation level scenario.
I thought it was really interesting because when I first heard it, I was like, why is he going all in on this mutually assured destruction? Because they can take this to turn it to say like your chances of nuclear war aren't cool. So I thought it was legit on trying to win that because I think if you take out that impact, at least minimize it enough that this won't happen, that means the risk that's on your case is elevated. So I think it's a decent because it allows for a better weighing in the rebuttals if you're decreasing the probability of those impacts occurring versus the Calcon case. So that's what I think. I thought it was all right. So, cool.
Thanks, man.
All right, y'all. Good stuff.